The Christ our brother comes, resplendent from the gallows tree. And what he brings in his hurt hands is life on life for you and me. Joy, joy, joy to the heart, and all in this good day's dawning. Joy, joy, joy to the heart, and all in this good day's dawning. Hello, and welcome to St. James the Less online. That is one of my favorite Easter hymns in our Hymnal 1982, and it's a poem by John Bennett. Look there, the Christ our brother comes. It's been set to several different hymn tunes. That particular tune is by the American composer William Albright, and he wrote it in 1983, and his goal was to fuse like rock and roll boogie-woogie music with minimalism, that 20th century style where repeated phrases of varying lengths sort of phase in and out with one another. And so in the keyboard accompaniment for that hymn, you'll hear a group of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And a group of 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And if you do the math, you'll realize that a group of 11 does not often synchronize with a group of 6. And neither of them has anything to do with the vocal melody, which is not in the keyboard accompaniment. So this is why this is one of my favorite Easter hymns, but also the words are glorious. So I'm going to go through verses number 2 and 3. And I'm not promising at all that I'm going to get everything right, but at least you'll get a sense of how those lines interact with one another. Good Jesus Christ, inside his pain, look down Golgotha's stony slope, and let the blood flow from his flesh to fill the springs of living hope. Joy, joy, joy to the heart, and all in this good day's dawning. Joy, joy, joy to the heart, and all in this good day's dawning. Good Jesus Christ, our brother, died in darkest hurt upon the tree, and offered us the worlds of light that live inside the Trinity. Joy, joy, joy to the heart, and all in this good day's dawning. Joy, joy, joy to the heart, and all in this good day's dawning. Well, so that is a very happy Easter song, and when it talks about Jesus' hurt hands, it calls to mind our gospel reading for this Sunday, the second Sunday of Easter. It's from John 20, and you'll remember the story. The disciples are in a locked room. They're afraid. It's the day of Jesus' rising, and Jesus appears among them, breathes his spirit upon them. Then they tell Thomas, the disciple who was not with them at this meeting. Thomas does not believe, but a week later, they're all in the same locked room, this time with Thomas. Jesus appears, Thomas touches Jesus' hurt hands and his side, and he believes. People have been telling this story in song almost as long as Christianity has been around. And our next song is That Easter Day with Joy Was Bright. It gets the first part of the story, the part where the disciples without Thomas are in the locked room. If you're following along in your hymnal, this is number 193, and we're going to do stanzas 1 through 3, although I'll have all of them printed in the description of this video. This text is very early. It goes back to only 500 or 600 years after the life of Jesus. But in the late Renaissance period, people started setting it to a Christmas carol, much like Now the Green Blade Rises, which I talked about last week. The Christmas carol was Puer nobis nascitur, unto us a boy is born. And originally it was sung like a chant. Unto us a boy is born, the King of all creation. But then, around the turn of the 1600s, Michael Praetorius, the German composer, added a beat to it. And so it took on sort of a lilting dance-like feel. And that is one of the settings that we have in our hymnal. So, that Easter day with joy was bright. Again, this is stanzas 1 through 3. That Easter day with joy was bright, the sun shone out with fairer light, when to their longing eyes restored, the apostles saw their risen Lord. His risen flesh with radiance glowed, his wounded hands and feet he showed, those scars their solemn witness gave, that Christ was risen from the grave. O Jesus, King of gentleness, do thou thyself our hearts possess, that we may give thee all our days the willing tribute of our praise. That is a very happy look at that meeting in the locked room, but of course there was another emotion at work there. John tells us that the disciples were afraid. They were afraid of those who had crucified Jesus, and they were hiding, and that's why the doors were locked. And there's a brand new hymn that captures that fear and anxiety. It's called Unlock, O God, the Shuttered Rooms, and it's by a friend of mine, Jennifer Baker Trinity. We went to college together, and she tells me that 5 years ago she was writing this hymn for a conference. She told me she would write it on a napkin during slow times at the restaurant where she worked. And when our time of isolation started several weeks ago, her husband Nathan encouraged her to take the hymn back out and notice how relevant it is to our current situation. And it's really remarkable. So I'll present that as a 4-stanza meditation here. Jen showed it to her friend Chad Fothergill, who's a Lutheran organist, and he set it to music. And I love this hymn because it puts us right there in the locked room with the disciples. It acknowledges our fear and anxiety, these emotions that are consistent throughout the ages, and it gives us words to invite Jesus into whatever locked room we find ourselves in. So, as I sing this, consider, what locked rooms are you finding yourself in? Of course, we're all cooped up at home, but if you're feeling trapped or hidden, like there's some kind of locked room around your spirit, how might Jesus be trying to enter that room? Unlock, O God, the shuttered rooms. Unlock, O God, the shuttered rooms, the places where our spirits sigh, the walls entomb our fearful hearts, and echo with our spirits' cries. Seek us, O God, wherein we dwell, the places where our spirits hide. Call us to hear and trust your voice, to boldly welcome you inside. Touch now, O God, this flesh that aches, for healing from your outstretched hand. Breathe now upon these bones of earth, just as your Spirit mends the land. Inspire, O God, each one who claims to dwell as Christ's own body here. Though hiding, still you call our names, and give us peace amid our fears. A beautiful song. Our final song today comes from the carol tradition as well. And it's one that, again, has been sung for many years, but no one is quite sure how it originated. Our hymnal companion says, "A cloud of confusion exists concerning both the identity of the author and the source of the tune." And the hymn in question is, "O sons and daughters, let us sing." If you're following along in your hymnal, it's number 206. And this also comes from a very long carol, probably from medieval times, and it tells the story both of the day of Jesus' resurrection and then a week later with Thomas in that locked room. And no one is quite sure whether it began as more of a chant song or just a French carol that was trying to emulate a chant song. But either way, I really like the comparison to carols. You know, when we're out Christmas caroling every year, there's something about the act of walking around and singing about Christmas to people that conjures Christmas into being for us. Of course, Christmas would still exist if we didn't go Christmas caroling, and Jesus has risen, regardless of whether we sing about it. But when we sing our Alleluias and when we sing year after year, century after century, the stories of the resurrection, it's one way of reaching for the risen Christ. So as we sing together the Alleluias and verses 1, 5, and 6 of O Sons and Daughters, Let Us Sing, I encourage you to think of that. You know, we're reaching for Jesus when we're doing these things. We're inviting him into our locked rooms. Not that he needs the invitation. He'll show up where he wants. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. O sons and daughters, let us sing. The King of heaven, our glorious King, o'er death and hell rose triumphing. Alleluia. No longer Thomas then denied. He saw the feet, the hands, the side. Thou art my Lord and God, he cried. Alleluia. How blessed are they who have not seen, and yet whose faith has constant been, for they eternal life shall win. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for singing and humming along at home, and I hope you find Jesus in the midst of your locked room, whatever that might be.